Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. This is an intro to never-ending referrals with MAPS coach Steve Schlueter. Please note this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to you by the end of the day today. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions, you can always email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's FASTTRACK@kw.com. And that's all for me. So, Steve, you can take it away.
Hey, thank you, Paige. Hey, welcome everybody to the introduction of Never-Ending Referrals. And today we're going to give you some background on the program, what's at the core of its foundation, why it was founded, and actually going to give you some meat and potatoes and maybe even some sauerkraut too. We'll see what goes along with it that you can actually put in practice today as soon as this is over. Don't do it while it's going on. I want you completely focused because you're going to get some major nuggets today that can make a big difference in your database. And then ultimately, we're going to ask you to join us on our journey through Never-Ending Referrals and the program, and we'll tell you about how to do that a little later on. So let's get right into this right now, and thanks for joining us today. And every time we do one of these open houses or preview sessions, I think about why might somebody be here today exploring a program called Never-Ending Referrals. And maybe you're here to receive more referrals. You see other people having a business of abundance and referrals seem to come in effortlessly, and you desire to have that too. Or maybe you're looking for a system that matches the way that you desire to work. Sometimes we come across and people are tired of what seems like a grind with circle prospecting or for sale by owners and expireds, and they go, I want to change my business to relational from transactional. And so they're looking for a system, maybe a system that's about giving and coming from contribution. And that's really what the Never-Ending Referral system is all about. And it's, by the way, it's not a class. It's a system, and I'm going to give you some pieces of it today. We're going to give you the foundational pieces of it that we build on throughout this program. So get ready to play. You do have on your GoToWebinar control panel a questions box, as Paige said. So if questions come along as we're going through the program, I'll primarily be fielding your questions at the end. There will be some places where I'll be asking for interaction. I'll have a couple of polls for us as we go through this afternoon. Also, if you put a question there, be very specific, because if you say, now repeat that, it might have been 3 slides ago before I see it in the questions box and may not know what you're referring to. So please be specific as we go in. And we're going to start off, and one of the things that I really look to do in this program is gain your participation. This is where we get perspective. And I want to start you off with a poll that's a not so scientific study, if you will, that Tony DeCello and I started doing back in, it was September 11th, 2008. And Tony DeCello and I were out on the Shift book tour. And if you don't know Tony DeCello, Tony is Diana Kokoska's husband. He's the coach of coaches, probably the most sought after real estate coach in the industry. And Tony and I were out on the Shift book tour, and Tony was out taking Shift out into the marketplace as we were in the middle of the real estate recession. And well, I was his backup. If there was a place that Tony couldn't get to or Tony fell ill, I was the person that was there to back Tony up. Well, we were at the very first venue, it was Chicago, on September 11th, 2008. We had 700 people in the room. And Tony asked a question of the room that I'm going to ask you now. And I'm about to put a poll up, and you'll be able to answer right on your screen. I'd like you to participate 100%, because this is going to set the foundation for our conversation today. In fact, I think it could be a fairly enlightening conversation. And let's start with this poll. Now, think carefully before you answer. Give me just the real answer. I don't know who answered. I'm not going to look at who answered. And let's just take a look at this. I'm going to launch this poll. It's a yes or no. The question is, I touch my database 28 to 36 times annually via some type of method. Now that would be, it could be direct mail, email, personal contact, 28 to 36 times minimum annually. Just a yes or no. Let's get a high participation in the poll. Of course, y'all know, if you've read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which I know most of you have, you're familiar with 33 touch. Interesting. This is a very interesting result, because I'll tell you about the results we got in the room in Chicago in a moment. Let's get a few more votes here. We're about 40 seconds into voting. And heck, if it was primary season yesterday, surely you guys are warmed up for voting. So let's go. All right, I'm going to close the poll. Let's see what we've got here. About 80% of you voted. Thanks for your participation. All right, so let me share the results. So 42% of you said, yes, I'm touching my database via some means 28 to 36 times annually via some method. 58% of you said no. Well, let me ask another question. We're going to clear this one. And this is a really be honest. And I want you to really be honest with this. If you have to stop and think about it, then the answer is no. And so be really clear on this. And I'm going to put the question up. And here's the question. I'm doing a pure 28 to 36 touch. Now, this is the question Tony then asked after he asked the initial question, with a minimum of those four of those touches being phone to in phone or on phone or in person. Now, let's be really clear about that. At least 4 annually of those touches are over the phone or in person. So let's get a high. Let's check this out. Are you talking to them quarterly? I'm really excited about the results I'm seeing so far. Keep voting, man. Y'all guys are some voting machines. Good job. Love the participation. All right. Going to close the poll. Here we go. Let me show you the results. Now, the results changed. We went from high 40% doing a 33 touch via some channel and down to 20%. 80% of you were not doing the 4 touches a year in person or over the phone. 20% of you were. Now, I got to tell you, as much as that's not the number we would love to see, we'd love to see it inverted and see 80% say yes and 20% say no. And yet, here's what Tony and I discovered that day in Chicago. We discovered a thing we called the 3% crisis. Now, obviously, today we've got the right audience. We have an audience that's desires to be engaged around their database, is looking for opportunities to be more intentional with one's database. And so that's probably reflected in the 20%. And yet, when we've looked at the industry, Tony and I, Tony asked the initial question, how many of you were touching your database 28 to 33 times via some channel? And 15% of the room stood up. When he asked for clarity on that and said a pure 33 touch, it dropped from 15% to 3%. And Tony and I came to coin this as the 3% crisis. We call it a crisis. Well, maybe you'll understand why we call it a crisis in just a moment. And it's becoming probably clearer and clearer as you think about some of the things that are going on in our industry. And yet, it's also the 97% opportunity. And so let's dive right into this and explore this a little bit and why it's important that we move that needle to high intentionality regarding the relationships with our database. In fact, I'm going to put this up here and I'm going to open my questions box and I'm going to ask that you do the same. And because I'm going to have you chime in on the questions box here in a minute. And here's my question for you. What does the travel agent, the Blockbuster store owner, and the real estate agent have in common? What do these 3 have in common? If you know, put it in the questions box. Or you can put, duh, I don't have a clue in the questions box. They're all in the people business. Online threats, says Andrew. Okay, question. All right. Yeah, people go to them. No clue. It's all right. They all need clients. Absolutely. repeat business. Okay. All interesting answers, and of course, as you can imagine, it's a little bit of a trick question. Um, Here we go. Travel agent, realtor need referrals, and people seek them. Okay, all interesting answers. Let me clear out the questions box here because we're going to use that again in a second. Let me give you the answer. So when you think about these three, it's not what they have in common; it's who they have in common. Whoops. And who they have in common is a gentleman named Rich Barton. Write that down, Rich Barton. And Rich Barton was the founder of Expedia. And Expedia was the beginning of the aggregation of flight data and travel data that was the beginning of what we call the disintermediation of the travel agent. And so Rich was the founder of Expedia. Now, Rich is also on the board of directors of a little company that is called Netflix. And of course, Gary talked about Netflix at the Vision speech, how they really changed the game in video. I mean, they went head to head with Blockbuster, and they would get you a DVD or a Blu-ray, in your mail the next day from distribution centers, and would track your preferences and give you recommendations. Didn't have late fees, and then of course they became the kings of streaming video. And then so Rich is on the board of directors of Netflix, and Rich is also the founder of, what do you think? Zillow. And so you look at this and you're going, wow, the travel agent, I don't think they're very common anymore unless they deal in specialties of some sort. The Blockbuster, well, I don't think there's a video store rental around that I've seen anymore. And the realtor, are you next? I trust not. And because the game is a little different for us. In fact, you're probably going to want to make some notes here. And let me give you some perspective on how you can make sure you don't follow the same fate of the travel agent and the Blockbuster owner. And yet it means there's some changes we have to make in our industry. And of course, Keller Williams, hang on a second. Yeah, Vanessa, I'm not sure. I think let me see. Okay, I think we got it. Did that clear up the poll? Vanessa, give me a heads up, right? Your screen okay? Got it. Thank you for the heads up there. Appreciate it. So when you look at this and what these folks have in common, how do we combat the market of the moment? And so here, let's jump into this. So write this down. This is a conversation I had with Gary in the early 2000s. Gary Keller and I were having a conversation around the internet. And this is when the .com world was coming of age. And everything that had .com was sexy, was getting venture capital. We had eBay was just coming on in the world. Amazon was just coming online. And we had a conversation about the internet and e-commerce. And Gary and I talked about this thing called Commodities. In fact, Amazon published just recently, and they were talking about their business strategy. And Amazon has succeeded in the world of what we would call standard commodities. That's where they shine. And so let's talk about the four types of commodity. So and we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. So a standard commodity, something like a book or sundries or CDs, a Blu-ray, you get it online. It's the same thing you would get in a store. It's not any different. And that's where Amazon shines, is in standard commodities. Then, of course, let's go up a notch. The next level of commodity is what we would call a choice commodity. Very simple to do an e-transaction on a choice commodity. I stayed at a hotel last night. I'm traveling, and I simply had to pick a location, pick a date, pick a room, and it was as simple as that. It was choice commodities, fairly easy. e-commerce transaction. So as we were discussing real estate and e-commerce, then we talked about the next level, which said with custom commodity. And think about this. I don't know if there's any golfers out here on the webinar today, but let's say you were going to buy a custom set of ping irons, and it was going to be a $2,200 investment. Now, online, they give you a measuring guide and say, here's how to measure you for your custom golf clubs. Hey, we got a golf professional. And, now Jean, who's a golf professional, or Jeanette rather, who's a golf professional, might be comfortable using a fitting guide online and going ahead and ordering those custom golf clubs direct via the internet. Yet most of us, probably 98% of us, it's too big of an investment. It's too easy to get wrong. And rather than trust that I'm going to just measure it right and have the perfect product and ultimately have to be the one responsible if it's wrong, I'm probably going to go to a golf pro. I'm probably going to go somewhere where I know it's going to be handled properly and I'm going to get some guidance. And so custom commodities don't really transact well in e-commerce. Now, this is something that Amazon, mentioned in the article I read in the last couple of days, that where they specialty type products aren't really their niche. They're more of standard commodity type platform. And then we get into this thing called a unique commodity. And I spoke today to a group of realtors on Lake Conroe, Texas, and all around us was all this beautiful waterfront property. It was very unique. There was nothing cookie cutter about that community. And what that meant was that type of commodity is one that probably isn't going to be very vulnerable to e-commerce. So here's the exciting thing about our industry. Everything that the Blockbuster store owner or the travel agent was dealing in was a standard or choice commodity. You're dealing in custom and unique commodities as a real estate agent, at least that of the product. The decision we have right now this is the point of maybe making you wiggle. The decision, the line that is being drawn in the sand right now is whether you as a real estate agent will be a custom or unique commodity, or will you become a choice or a standard commodity? And the way you make the difference is you got to start moving from a transactional mindset to a relational mindset. And this is where the power of the database comes in. If you were at Gary's keynote at Family Reunion, you heard him talk about the first panel he brought out was all on database. And he saw people making that shift from being transactional to building bigger databases to adding value. Because if you're not careful, you could just then be another choice of a realtor. And heaven forbid we ever became a standard commodity. And really, all of that is up to us at this point. So now that I've got your attention, let's dig into this a little deeper. You may be familiar with this from the 6 personal perspectives that we teach at Keller Williams. It's this little thing called E to P. And I'm going to share with you something Gary Keller shared with me, a unique way of looking at this that I don't think many of you have probably heard before. And the way Gary explains E to P, he says, we're starting off anything we do. And as we think about your database today, we tend to go attack it very entrepreneurially. What comes naturally? What's comfortable? We do it entrepreneurially. And sooner or later, we get to an entrepreneur ceiling. We hit a ceiling of achievement. You know you're there when the self-talk becomes one of disappointment. This is tougher than I thought it would be, or I thought this would be easier. And if you're not careful, that leads to resignation. I guess this is as good as it's going to get. And I guess I'll just have to settle for the way things are. And then if you're not careful, that ultimately leads to greener pastures. And you go, maybe I'll be a loan officer or a title person or a home warranty rep. And we begin something new with lots of enthusiasm, excitement, all those E words that go with being entrepreneurial. And the cycle can go on and on. So what Gary shared with us is we have to move from being entrepreneurial to being purposeful. Now, when we think about this thing called a purposeful style, here, write this down. The high achiever's curse. The high achiever's curse. See, many of you on this webinar today, including yours truly, have suffered from this disease. And the way Gary explained it to me is that what happens is those that have a fairly high natural aptitude have this belief that with just sheer focus and accountability, with focus and accountability, that they can take it to a whole nother level. And Gary said what they fail to do, and he goes, that's the curse of the high achiever. They believe if I'm committed enough, if I'm focused enough, I can achieve the next level. And he said what they fail to do, Steve, he says they fail to ignore, or they fail to pay attention rather, and they ignore the middle three, the strategic options, the options that are right for them, the models that support those options and systems that underpin those models. And he said the real secret to being purposeful is not starting with focus and accountability. It's starting with the best option for you and your situation and where you are right now. It's applying the appropriate models and the systems that support those models. And then once you've identified the middle three, the often forgotten middle three, to bring focus and accountability to that. Not to start with focus and accountability, to start with the right options, models, and systems. So today we're giving you a preview into the models and the systems and some of the options that underpin never-ending referrals. So with that in mind, let's go forward. Let's do a little analysis. Now you're going to pull out something you could do some calculating with. If you're on your phone, see if you can go to your calculator for a second, or find a way to get your calculator out. Simple math, may not even need it. And yet let's do a little analysis real quick on your opportunity. And then I'm going to have you put some of the numbers in the questions box and see what we came up with. So let's take a look at this. Now, write down right now for A, the number in your Met database. And if you don't have it organized, how many would it be? So when you think about friends, family, past clients, your network, your sphere of influence that's reasonably local, how many people would go in A? And go ahead and do that calculation. Or just write it down, I should say. So A is the number in your Met database, or that would be in your Net database if you had it organized. Now B is going to be 10% of A. So take A times 0.10 and put that down as B. So 10% of A is going to be B. So if A was 300, B is going to be 30. Now for C, write down the number of closings that you had from your database in 2017. So either people in your database that did business with you in transactions that closed, or business they referred to you that closed. So how many units did you close as a result of referrals and or business directly from your database? You track it right back to there. So put that number on line C. Now for D, please take B and subtract C from it. So B is again would equal a 10% return on my database. C, the number I actually did. So take B, subtract C, and then what is D? And then take D times your average commission. And that's your financial opportunity. So D is your units gap based upon a 10% return in your data from your database. And E is your additional commission dollars opportunity that is latent in your database right now if you're not getting a 10% return minimum on your database today. Now, there are some people that get 12, 15, and 17% returns. In fact, the MREA model The 2 for every 12 return is equal to 17%. And yet that takes 3 to 5 years of being hyper intentional with a database to get those types of returns. Anyone can get to a 8 to 10% return in 12 to 15 months. 10%, if you're really intentional, is completely achievable. So right now, in the questions box, put down the financial number for E that you wrote down. When you did the math, what was E? What's the financial opportunity available right now to you in your database? Let's see some of your numbers. Wow. So Tim, 110, Andrew, 250,000, Vanessa, 268.2. You calculated it down to the penny, girl. Renee, 150,000. So far, everybody's 6 figures. Look down, more 6-figure numbers. I mean, so you look at the opportunity here simply in the math. 78,000. Thank you, Greg. So we look at these numbers, and that's 300,000, Deb. You get the high number right there. And I did this exercise in a class the other day, and I had where they have a fairly high average sales price, and the numbers that were in the 7 figures were astounding. And again, this is just a 10% on one's database. Thank you for those numbers. So now that you see what the financial opportunity is, let's get into some of the fundamentals of never-ending referrals and help you. Hey, Linda, you must be doing pretty good with yours at 42, so you're pretty close. So it's time for you to get that 10% return. That's still a car. Time for you to get that 10% return and then start building it to 12, 14, 16, 17%. So let's keep moving. Now I have one other additional thought for you. And this goes to one little piece of this exercise. Agent in one of my market centers, I'm OP, I've got multiple market centers, and one of my agents was about to do bold. She said, Steve, I get so much anxiety before doing bold because I run out of people to call. And I said, well, what do you mean you run out of people to call? She goes, well, I've only got like 250 in my database. And after I get through those, it's a lot tougher for me in bold. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Because to me, I thought her name's Mary. And I said, there's no way Mary just has 250. She's got 5 kids. They're all involved in stuff, and she's involved in their stuff. She's very active in her church. They've lived in the community for a long time. You know, she's got a base of past clients. And I asked her this question, and I'm going to ask it to you too, and I want you to think about your answer. I said, Mary, let's say you were going to throw the 4th of July blowout of all 4th of July blowouts. And your favorite artist was going to play the concert. And money was no option. It was free to you. I said, who's your favorite artist? And she said, Beyonce. For me, it would be Zach Brown Band. Whatever yours is, it is. And I said, now let's say it's the hottest 4th of July gig in town. Everybody desires to be there. And I said, the only way they can get in is they have to come to the gate. And they say, this is how I know Mary. And Mary would at least know me as an acquaintance. She would know who I am. I said, Mary, based upon that, how many people are going to be at your 4th of July concert, excluding your real estate friends? And she said, well, gosh, Steve, it'd have to be at least 700. And then, of course, I was quiet. And then she just looked at me. She goes, oh. And over the course of the next 2.5 weeks, she had already identified the next 250 that she added to her database. And she began to work through them in bold, adding to the contact information, updating information, and moving them forward. So here's my question for you. When you answer that question for you, how many would be at your 4th of July party? How many, in addition to what you put in A just a moment ago, how many more would be added to your database? In fact, go to the questions box. If you had significant number more than what you put in A before that would be added based upon showing up at your 4th of July blowout, how many more? Put that in the questions box. Let's see what we got. Because I bet the number was higher. And maybe in some cases significantly higher, especially if you've been in your market for a long time. So here's 80 more, 105 more. That's getting specific. 130, 200. Where you go, 125. So, you look at this, the opportunity to add to one's database and then get a 10% return on that. So here's Greg at 125. So Greg, that's an additional 12.5 transactions based upon a 10% return once you get that sorted out. Here's one, Jerese says, I need to go look at all my Facebook friends. Who is a real friend in there? Who's a real addition to the database? In fact, we're going to talk Facebook here in just a few moments. So some great thoughts. All right, let's jump into this a little deeper. So never-ending referrals is built off of what Gary Keller taught us in The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And he said, when it came to the database, he said there were 4 laws. Now, by the way, let me be very clear. He said there were 4 laws to the database, not 4 suggestions, not 4 recommendations, not 4 shoulds. There are 4 laws. And violate any one of the laws and you do it at your own peril and you don't get the return that you desire for your database. And so the 4 laws are simply this. You must build and organize it. And when we say build and organize, you've got to put it into a real estate specific platform that allows you to work with it, to communicate with it, to organize it, export it, do the things that you need to do with a database to foster communication. You've got to feed it daily. We're going to go through some concepts on each one of these here in a few moments. You've got to communicate with it systematically, and you've got to work all that comes from it. So let's dig right into this. And so how do you get strategic about these 4 laws? The goal of never-ending referrals is simply this. To number one, have you understand that anybody can be successful with their database. In the KPA, we talk about behavioral styles. We talk about the assertive, the sociable, the structured, and the steady. And on the disc, the assertive would be the high D. The social would be the high I. The structured would be the high C, and the steady be the high S. And I remember when I started my real estate career, there was a lady that sat behind me in the cubicles we were at the Century 21 office. And see, I'm one of these high assertives. And she'd be on the phone and big voice and big personality and, hey, never met a stranger. And I'm this high assertive, not high social individual. And she's over there saying, oh, Steve, you just got to be friends with all your clients and you'll have a lot of success. And I'm thinking to myself, I got 4 friends. I don't need any more. And what I eventually learned about the database is set up correctly, it can work for any behavioral style. Even if you're the high assertive or the high structured, and maybe you're not the most sociable person in the world, you can reposition yourself in a way that you can win using your personality. Gary taught us in the Shift book that really the job of us as real estate agents is not to be their best friend, it's to be their trusted real estate advisor, their local real estate economist of choice. So as we go through never-ending referrals, we help you learn how to use your behavior so that you can be authentic. Nothing really defeats success with the database more than being inauthentic. People feel that vibration. It causes lack of connection. And ultimately, it creates such a discomfort for you as an agent that we don't follow through and ultimately don't get the success we could with a database. So in this system, what we're really doing is giving you a system that'll work for anybody in any behavioral style. And so let's talk about this thing that we ultimately, now you may have heard in Keller Williams about something called the GPS or a 135. In never-ending referrals, it's a little different. We build a 145. It's just a 3 with 1 more. And a GPS or a 135 or a 145 in the case of never ending referrals, is the one main objective, the 4 goals, and then the 5 strategies for each goal, or priority, we should say, and then the strategies for each priority. So the key objective of never ending referrals is to set the foundation for you to get a 10% return on your database and add or feed 250 new contacts or more into your database over the next 12 months to grow it. And we do that following the 4 laws, which we just went over: the build and organize, the feed it daily, communicate, and systematically work all the business. Now, the way a GPS or a goals priority strategy model works is then you build out 5 strategies for each of these 4 priorities. Now, so that's going to look like this. So we've got our 1, our 10% return. We've got each of our 4 laws, which are our priorities. And as you go through this program, remember we talked about E to P. Gary said strategic options. Well, how you're going to address each of these laws, the 5 strategies that are going to apply to you, are going to be a little different for everyone. And as we go through the 12 weeks of never ending referrals, you're going to find your strategies for each of the 4 laws that are going to work for you. So, for example, the person who is a high social, who lives in the community you went to school in, you grew up there, you've been a part of the community for years, your ability to feed it and build it and organize it and grow it is much different than the person who maybe just moved to the community 6 months ago and is looking to build a database. So there's going to be an entirely different feed it strategy for the person who's new in a community. And there would be a different communication strategy. And all of that comes together based upon where you are in your business right now. Now, that's the great thing about the system. It's designed to modify and adapt to where you are versus you're saying, oh, that doesn't work for me because I'm not that person that's lived there all my life. So even if you're just getting started with a database of 26 people, we're still going to move you to adding 250 or more in the next 12 months and doing it in a way where they're quality new relationships that you actually can build on for that 10% return. So I hope you're getting excited about building your plan. Now, let's go to something that is the foundation of never-ending referrals. And it's a thing we call doing the database too. And in fact, it's often known as DTD2. You can do hashtag DTD2 if you like. And I take you back to the Shift Roadshow that Tony DeCello and I were on, and we found that people weren't making those phone calls. And they weren't actually communicating with their database in person or over the phone. And what we found in the research is that's where the referrals occur. If you're going to generate the maximum referral return from your database, you have to be in personal contact. You can be in less contact than 4 times a year, and you may still get their repeat business and the occasional referral. And yet, if you're going to get to a 10% or better return, the personal contact was the key. In fact, in some of the research that Gary and his team were doing for Millionaire Real Estate Agent 2, Jay Papazan shared at Mega Tech 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. He said the research said you could do away with the direct mail. You could do away with the email. And if all you had left was personal contact once a quarter, you'd get a better return than the other 2 would separately. If you focused on value added contribution communication with your database. So we created this little thing in my market centers that we call DTD2. And we broke down the alphabet into 2-letter groups. And the objective was to call your database by 2-letter group each week. And it became a conversation. If you know the bold law, people grow into the conversations you have around them. At the market center level, we decided to start having a conversation around the database. And on B&E week, there was a theme, be the master of your database. On I&Q week, the theme was brilliant agents work their database. And by the way, all year long, these 2-letter groups work in a certain rotation. And by the way, there's 26 letters. 2 a week. That means every 13 weeks you get through your database. That's 13 times 4 is 52. Elegantly, you call your database on a system 4 times per year. Now, here's the beauty. It's the having the conversation. It's knowing who you're going to call week to week, and it allows you to have a beginning and end each week as well. During B&E week, the goal is to make contact. So one of the things we teach you in the first session is what we call the 3-attempt approach. It's the script and the system for actually making 3 attempts to that 2-letter group over the course of the week. What's the script? What's the voicemail? How do you set it up so that you make maximum contact with that group? And then what do you do after you've made 3 attempts if you haven't talked to them? And then the next week you move on to the next group. Now, this also becomes part of your platform for your social media. We're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to give you a social media tip for setting it up DTD2 style or any style you choose. And yet this became a conversation. It's rebirth careers. It's given agents in our market center a system for working their database. And here's the key thing. It keeps you out of call bias. I was in Atlanta doing a bold session. I'm a bold coach. And doing a bold session, and a student that was doing DTD2 came up to me. She said, Steve, it was INQ week last week, and I made a call to somebody ordinarily, if I were not doing DTD2, honestly, I would have opted not to call them. And yet I committed to the system. I called them, and I got $1 million listing and $1.2 million buy side from one phone call that I would not have called because I would have been in bias thinking they're not going to have anything for me. I needn't bother with that call. So remember DTD2. We're going to talk about it again in a minute. This is at the foundation. This was addressing that big missing piece that Tony and I began to coin as the 3% crisis. Only 3% were making those phone calls. So let's go into these 4 laws right now. And we're moving quickly. This is a preview. I want to give you some meat, and let's talk about one strategy or maybe 2 strategies under each of the 4 laws that we cover in Never Ending Referrals to give you some perspective. So let's go to build and organize it. So under build, the M disappeared. We give you a CRM workout with tutorials, and right there at step 1, we're going to have you watch some tutorial videos on how to create the DTD2 groups in your contact manager, whether it's eEdge, Top Producer, Contactually. This is not CRM specific. We're going to take you through how to import contacts if you don't have it set up, and how to populate your DTD2 groups. Like, for example, the first week, the first group is A&W. And so we'll actually have a CRM workout that takes you right through how to set it up. And we'll have the screenshots as well as the actual video tutorial that walks you right through the highlights. And by the way, as KW Command comes on, we'll have updated tutorials that allow you to apply and import this right to it. A couple of questions. Let me hit a couple of questions while we're at it here. What does DTD2 stand for? And A&W. So A&W is just one of the 2-letter groups, that we broke them down into. And what we did in our market center, great question, Crystal, is what we did in our market center is we launch every round of DTD2, which stands for Doing the Database 2, DTD2. We launch every round with A&W, and we celebrate with a power day. Everybody comes in and starts calling their database the A&W group by last name, names that end with A, names that end with W, and we celebrate at the end with a root beer float party. So that's where we call it Sweet Success is the theme for that session. So again, we're attempting to have a conversation or intending to have a conversation around this. What CRM do you recommend is another one. Right now, I would say if you're not actively using one, use eEdge because it'll do everything that you need to do for this system. And when Command is ready to launch out of labs for complete distribution, likely the import's going to be really simple. And I would just say go to eEdge for now. What tends to happen, folks, is people expect CRMs to be magical and magic pills and do everything on a set it and forget it basis. What we're going to teach you in Never Ending Referrals is that the philosophy of set it and forget it is really a bad idea. For you to get to a 10% return in this next 12 months requires you being intentional with the database, not setting and forgetting it. And so you'll be getting really hands-on with it. And the tutorials will teach you exactly what to do to keep it simple and not complicated. So let's go to Feed It. So in the area of Feed It, let me give you a little strategy here. In fact, I'm going to give you a script. In fact, in the Handouts tab, you have a script that I've put in here from Never Ending Referrals that you can go ahead and download. We call it the five-star script. This is a great one that can add many additions to your database. And so go to the Handouts tab and you'll find the ability to download it as a PDF. In fact, I am going to put it up on my screen right now. Let me do this. I'm going to change my screen and put this up here, and I'm going to walk you through this little script right here and think about how powerful it is. Okay, you're going to excuse me, guys. I'm fighting a cold. I'm going to mute and I'm going to blow my nose. Isn't that sexy? All right, mission accomplished. I'm back. All right, so let's go through this little script together. We call it the 5-star script. And it works like this. And you make the phone call, and you're calling into your sphere of influence, your network. And you say, hello, blank, it's Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams Realty. Hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, I was calling today to see if you could help me with a project we're working on for our friends and clients. And obviously, as a real estate professional, you can imagine I've got clients moving into the area, and they're always in needs of all kinds of professional services and service providers that they've left behind from where they've moved. And I was just curious if you'd had a 5-star experience in the last few weeks with anyone that's provided you service that you might suggest we place in our directory of great service providers. And of course, you're going to pause and they're going to think, and let's say they come back and they say Three Trees Landscaping has done a really great job for us. They're really professional. And you say, well, great. Tell me what you love about them. What specifically do they do that's so great? Well, they're always neatly put together, and they always leave things very clean. And I don't have to ask them to take care of the details, the shrubs. They just do it. Man, who's the contact over at Three Trees? And would it be okay if I used your name when I gave them a call? Well, now I've got a business-to-business referral. In fact, in session 3, we teach you how to build a business-to-business database of no less than 200 to 250 over the next 12 months. And this can be very powerful because, frankly, when we position ourselves as the people who know the people coming to town, business people want to know you. So they gave me the referral to Three Trees. Now I have a warm contact into a business-to-business relationship. Then I go on, hey, thank you for taking a moment to help me. I really appreciate it. By the way, hey, one of the other areas people have been asking about this time of year are great tax preparers or CPAs. And honestly, I'm kind of in need of a new one myself. Do you happen to have a 5-star relationship in that area that I could get introduced to? Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to have that 5-star tax preparer or CPA, and now you have another warm business-to-business lead, or they don't have one. If the answer is no, you say, would you like me to pass along any 5-star tax preparers when I identify them? When I find one, would it be okay if I had them connect with you? Or if I connected y'all? And you get their permission, and then you say, great. Now, of course, you wrap it up with, hey, thanks for your assistance with this project. And then, by the way, as it comes together, I'll be sharing the findings with you. As always, we appreciate your referrals. Is there anyone in the neighborhood or at work that's considering buying or selling right now that we could help? Hey, thanks for thinking about that. Is there anything else I can do for you? And they just say, send me that tax preparer. We need them. Great, I sure will. Hey, it was great to connect with you. Have an amazing week. Now, think about the power of this script. See, the real power of this script shows up when you call the CPA, who somebody said was a 5-star CPA. Maybe you got 3 recommendations for 5-star CPAs, and you had 15 people. That brilliant. Thank you, Natalie. That made my day. Maybe you've got 15 people that say they need a 5-star relationship in that area. Now, when you call the 3 CPAs and you have 15 leads, you've got 5 apiece. You walk right into a new business-to-business relationship with 5 potential contacts for them. And think about the foundation that sets. First, they were referred by somebody you know and trust. And then you walk into that relationship with people they might be able to help and you can connect them with. Great way to do a couple of things. Number one, you're building a concierge service for your database. And by the way, you have a tool on your Keller Williams app called Homekeeper, where you can develop essentially your own Angie's List, if you will, of recommended providers. So you can incorporate this into your Homekeeper function on your app. You can build a directory. You can have them call you as a concierge. This is part of working towards building relational type selling versus transactional, which in our world is becoming more important now as our industry goes through some metamorphosis. And they're going to go to the trusted real estate advisor, and that's ultimately the position you're going into and building here. So that's a little communication strategy for you there. Let me give you another one with Facebook. Let me get back to the proper view here. And bear with me. Full screen mode. There we go. And so we got to communicate. So that was a feed it technique. Right there was a 5-star script. You're going to feed it new business-to-business leads. Nextly, under communication, in session 4, we get into social media. And this is a little model that we'll take you through deeper. And yet I want to give you the model today of when you get on social media, rather than randomly posting, start thinking about what is it I want to accomplish today? Do I desire to connect, and with whom? Do I intend to maybe alert to an opportunity or a situation, a market condition? Is there an opportunity to refer? Or is there an opportunity to engage where actually I can take a relationship deeper and maybe set a meeting ultimately? The goal in Never Ending Referrals with Facebook is to be using Facebook to ultimately get face-to-face. It's not Facebook to Facebook. We're going to do that. And yet the ultimate goal is face-to-face, building relationships and adding value. Now, one of the ways you can get a little bit more proactive or intentional with Facebook is go back to that thing we called DTD2 a moment ago. So here's 2 of the DTD2 groups. Say that 100 times. Of the 13 groups, here's 2, B and E and I and Q. And I know that next week, for example, let's say is I and Q week. And wouldn't it be great if I could do a little social media stalking of everybody in my database that ended in I and Q? And so if I've got my Facebook organized by DTD2 custom list, I can go on and just see the feeds of that group. I can send a broadcast or chat messages just to people in that group. I don't have to go dig through everything else. Now, how do you do this? On that panel on the left-hand side, now this is a process called custom list. It's creating a custom list, not a group. There's a difference. And so right here by friends, you'll see that little button that says more. You'll click on more, and when you do, you're going to get this opportunity to create list. So you create list, and then you start creating by DTD2 group. And of course, we'll give you the 13 groups, the banners, all those resources to help you stay on this DTD2 path. And so the example of F&G and H&V and D&O and so on, you'll set up the groups, and then you'll put in here the first letter and start populating by just click, 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 quickly adding those people into your DTD2 custom Facebook list. And again, these are not groups. This is custom list. And then time, of course, over here, you will have your list that you'll be able to tackle into. So That's part of communicating it, and it's part of organizing it. So it kind of really fits into two of the laws right there. And then you can broadcast message just to an individual group. Now, with the algorithm changes that we've seen in Facebook, this is going to be really helpful, and it's going to be allow your message to more likely be seen. And of course, this is what it'll look like as you begin to populate it. Here I put in I, and you start just clicking on the last names that match up, and you create that list. And you can just quickly add them. Now, there's a weird thing in Facebook, and it sounds like it's going to take a lot more time, and it really doesn't. And I can't tell you why it works this way. When I put in I and I'm going through here and I've got Ingersoll and Inman and Eichenhauer and so forth, it's not giving me every single I. So I'm going to go back here and do IA, IB, IC, and it'll go really quickly. And the ones that are left that hadn't been selected will show up, and it'll make sure I get everybody. And then later, DTD2 becomes my maintenance schedule too. So anytime I'm on I and Q week, I can go back and clean this up. I can take people out of my custom list that I don't desire to have there. And as I put people in, I'm going to add them to my custom list as I approve friends and bring them into my Facebook world. So a nice way to elegantly organize your Facebook to work with the never-ending referral system and that foundational piece we call DTD2. Now, the fourth law, work it. One of the things that we got to get really clear about is when you begin to work this system, you begin to create this bucket of what we call nurtures. One of the things that you'll be doing is classifying your database by, are they core advocates, allied resources? Are they in our network MET group? And we'll explain all these things and who should be in what and how you might treat them differently. And yet there's this important group called nurtures. And what we work with you to build a foolproof follow-up system so that this bucket of nurtures doesn't fall through the cracks. One of the things that begins to happen when you get serious about the database, in about a 4 to 6 to 8 month lag, you have a massive uptick in conversion rate on your connections. Because what happens is you get referrals, they're at a party, they're at a function, they hear somebody talking about real estate, and well, you call them and turns out they can't do anything for 6 or 8 months because they have a lease to fulfill or some other obligation, a credit issue, and that lead needs to be nurtured to the finish line. And so one of the things we'll help you do is build a foolproof follow-up system so that that bucket of nurtures doesn't fall through the cracks. Here's what we've learned in the research for Millionaire Real Estate Agent 2. 70% of the listings and the buyers that top agents are converting are coming from follow-up activity. And this becomes one of the most vital pieces of managing one's database is that bucket of nurtures. It's that gold mine of people that intend to be doing something, in the next 12 to 18 months. So real quickly in wrapping up, and in fact, I'm going to tell you about a special offer here when we get through today. The workshops of NER are this. We begin the journey and take you through the foundation. We get into behavioral style and how to make it work for your behavior, the foundation of DTD2. In session 4, we get into social media. Session 5, we deal with that often forgotten 8x8 and how you cement a relationship. When you enter it into a database, how do you set it up for that 10% return from the very beginning? At session 6, we interview top coach Tony DeCello on his lessons with the database and what he's learned from top people that are managing large databases and how to do that. And then we dive into your message and the method in which you get your message out there. The next session we call Farm to Table. That's the other database. A geographic farm, by the way, is a database. And we show you how to turn it from a haven't met to a met. We're going to take you through client events and parties. We have an interview with the Daily Group out of Maryland. We cover evidence of success marketing, harnessing the power of video. And of course, in session 12, we bring it all together. So here's my question for you. And we're starting March 22nd is the next session of Never Ending Referrals. The cost is $297 for the 12 sessions. And if you'd like to enroll, In fact, I got a poll. Y'all, you guys are so good at voting. Let me throw another poll out here real quick. And if MAPS offered you a 15% discount, would you sign up now? Oh, there's an embedded command in there. Yes, 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 probably yes, or thinking about it and probably yes. So there you go. Let's look. Yeah, you couldn't resist that, could I? We'd love to have a little fun on Never Ending Referrals as well. And if you'd like to get a 15% discount, go to the chat window, and their link is right there in your chat window where you can link through to MAPS Coaching, Never Ending Referrals, and your discount code is Web15. Web15. And if you'll sign up right now, you can get the 15% discount. And we start March 22nd. That is a Thursday. I believe our start time each day is 12:30, and it's a 1-hour session. Great. I appreciate y'all going along with my humor here, and yet not really so much humor. And I trust that we'll get you on the program with us and on your journey to Never Ending Referrals. Of course, what you get. Let's go through what you get. You get the 12 60-minute sessions, bonus interviews, a personal planner guide to kind of help you really work through, your one thing and what's important to you. The 12 workbooks for each session, on-demand how-to videos, marketing templates, a script book, plus much more that we take you through to implement Never Ending Referrals as a system. And so that's what I've got for you today. I appreciate your time and attention. Happy to take questions if there's any questions. Let's see. What do you do with old cold contacts? And by cold contact, I think, what are you referring to, like an internet lead that's fed into your database, or just somebody in your database that you've not been in relationship with or you've not been in contact with? And we do have some scripts in the script book for that specific scenario. And here's one of the things I will tell you, and I get this as a coach constantly, and that is, oh man, I hate calling people that I've been out of touch with, I'm not in a relationship with any longer. You're hallucinating that they're counting the days. That, boy, I haven't heard from that Steve. When am I going to hear from that Steve? If it was really important to you, they would have called you. And every time I give them the script, we call it the apology script, where you call and you apologize. Man, I've been out of touch. You've been on my mind. And in fact, I was almost embarrassed to call you because I've been out of touch, but then I was going to be even more embarrassed if I didn't call you. So I'm falling on the sword. How you doing? And you get back in relationship. And what you can never do again, however, is after you've made the commitment to stay in touch, you got to stay in touch forever if you've lost it. So you can recapture it. You can only recapture it once. I hope that answers your question. Trust that answers your question. Is that 12:30? Oh, that's Central Time. Central Time. Do you recommend taking this course at the same time as Bold? Actually, Wes Kennedy, who is the tech guy and runs our Market Center version of Never Ending Referrals in Oklahoma City, says that when they do it concurrent, I should say, with Bold, he said they absolutely just blow the socks off their database. And so absolutely, Noah, if you're doing Bold, I think you're going to get even more from it because you're working on your mindset and contribution and gratitude and so many other things that are going to help you with this process. So yes, I think it'd be a great complement to Bold. It's 12:30 Central Standard Time is the time. Thank you. Simply do not see chat on my phone. Yeah, if you just simply go to the MAPS Coaching website and go to mapscoaching.com and put in Web15, that discount code will be good probably the next 72 hours or so. So I would take advantage of that. Just go to the MAPS Coaching website and go to group and find Never Ending Referrals, and Web15 is your discount code. Okay. All right, Noah. Hey, my pleasure, my friend. Unless there's any other questions, I think that does it, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, thank you. Great, Evelyn. Will they be recorded? Yes. Every session is recorded and accessible for 60 days after the program is completed. So you have 60 days post completion of the program to access all the resources on a resource site we call Basecamp. So the recordings are there, the workbooks are there, everything you need sitting there for you on Basecamp. Great question. Thank you, Evelyn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that looks like that does it. Thank you for your time and attention and exploring Never-Ending Referrals. Is there a registration deadline? Next Thursday, 3/13. Jason, I think we'll be able to get you in. So I'll just, usually they keep discount codes up for like 3 business days. Since this is a Thursday, you're probably okay. We'll make it happen for you. If nothing else, contact Fast Track at kw.com. That's our group coaching division, and tell them Steve said so. So you get it in by Tuesday. We'll make it happen, Jason. All right. Thank you. All right. See you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.